Hi everyone, this is APO Sports, and we're back continuing with our 2025 Indiana Fever projections for our players. And in this video, we're going to be talking about Natasha Howard. So, Natasha Howard is one of the new acquisitions for the Indiana Fever. She signed as a free agent during the offseason, and she last played with the Dallas Wings. I believe she was there for 2 years, and prior to that, she spent 2 seasons with the Liberty, and prior to that, she played 3 seasons in Seattle with the Seattle Storm, where she won 2 WNBA championships. Her time in the Liberty, that team struggled really bad. That was essentially Sabrina Ionescu's first year, pretty much, because her rookie year she got injured. She only played a few games, and then in 2021, I believe, was her first full season. 2022, second year, and then Natasha Howard was part of that group. But that team was pretty much just the two of them, right? So that team didn't do too well, and Natasha Howard was utilized quite a bit. And then in Dallas, that team actually in 2023 was really good. They made it to the semifinals, so WNBA semifinals, and they had a really good season. It seems like everybody was healthy, so they had a really nice season. But then the next season, 2024, I'm not exactly sure what happened. Again, this is kind of the year that I really started watching only the Indiana Fever, so I have no idea why Dallas was struggling. I know that Satu Sabali only played, I don't know, like 15 games or something like that. So she didn't play that much, and she's a huge, she was a huge factor in that offense, and just the huge presence on that roster. But anyways, needless to say, that was a really bad team last year. They only won 9 games, lost 31. So now, as we look forward to 2025 and her role with the Indiana Fever, this is going to be her 11th season in the league. She is 32 years old or 33, I'm not exactly sure. So, a veteran presence who's already won 2 titles, who has played in all kinds of different roster constructs with all kinds of different players. So, the great thing is that she's seen it all, she's done it all, and the projection for her in the roster is that she's likely going to be the starting power forward, replacing Alyssa Smith, and I believe that's already a huge upgrade at the position. When you have Natasha Howard instead of Alyssa Smith, that already spells good fortune for the Fever just in that fact alone. But now I'm curious to know how she's gonna fit as far as the whole, in the entire system, understanding that I don't know the last time that she played for a team where she was maybe the fourth or fifth best player. So this is, even though she's experienced, but the last time that she was in a similar situation like this was at least 6, 7 years ago. So something new to look forward to, and that's why I think the numbers as we project them, it's going to be tricky, but also we just have to see how the season develops. But let's get into the numbers. All right, so here we go. Here's our nice a nice worksheet that we have. As you already know, we already did Lexi Hull's numbers, and then we have the rest of the team here. But now we are doing and focusing on Natasha Howard. So minutes per game. Last year she played 30.6 minutes per game. She only played about 27 games last year. It seems like she was dealing with some sort of injury, so she didn't play, every game last year or even close to every game. But she did play 30.6 minutes, which is a lot. Now, I just don't know. This is going to be tough. Whether she's going to be continued to be trusted with that amount of minutes, understanding that you have the Maristantis on the bench, who's a stretch four, understanding, or in some instances she could be a center, but understanding you have Dantas on the bench, understanding you have Sophie Cunningham on the bench and Lexi Hull. So it's not like you have an empty bench of players that are not impactful, and meaning that Howard needs to be in the game at all times. So I do project a decrease in minutes for Howard. Not a lot, but I'm thinking maybe about 27 minutes per game, maybe 27, 8, close to 28, but not quite is what I'm thinking. Um, that she's gonna play. It's just there's just too much firepower in that Fever team, and a lot of the time, even though you may have a game plan, a lot of the time it just depends on how the team is going. It's which lineups and rotations are actually gelling and having an impact on the floor. That may not always be the case. That it's going to be a lineup including Natasha Howard. In some instances, it may be. In some instances, it may not be. But it's not like the team has no other options, and that's been the case with the teams that she's been in for the last 4 years, as I mentioned. Before leaving or after leaving Seattle, that the team had no other options. But the Fever have other options. Like I said, she's probably the 5th best player in that starting lineup. So the team is not going to be relying on her too much, just like they were relying on her last year, or the last few years. So field goal attempts, 15.2 is just too many. I mean, if we look at Kelsey Mitchell have 15, are we thinking that she's going to take more shots than Kelsey Mitchell? I think if that's the case, this favorite team is in trouble, right? 11.2 from Aaliyah Boston, and maybe I'll be a little uncomfortable as well if she's taking more shots than Aaliyah Boston. So, and then of course Caitlin Clark took 14 and a half. So I mean, Natasha Howard even took more shots than Caitlin Clark last year with Dallas. I just don't see it. So I'm reducing that quite a bit to maybe, I don't know, I'm thinking maybe 10.2 field goal attempts per game. Again, there's no way she can take, or Bonner. How many shots did Bonner take? 12.8? Nah, there's just no way. There's just no way. So 10.2. Okay, field goal percentage. She has a field goal percentage of 47% for her career. So there is no reason that's going to be lower. I think if you minimize the amount of shots, and the shots that you're taking now are better looks than you've had probably in your whole career, then this field goal percentage is going to go up. So I'm going to say that her field goal percentage is going to be more in the, I think it's going to be more like 52.5 or something like that. 52% from the field, just based on not just you're minimizing the shots, and the quality of looks that you're going to have are just going to be the best that you've seen in a while. So field goal percentage is going to go up. 3-point attempts. So she took 2, and this was kind of low. Over the last few years, like since 2021. In 2021, she took 2.8, and she's been taking a bunch of threes from there on. So, this one, so less minutes, field goal attempts, 10.2. There's just no reason. I mean, she could stretch the floor, but I mean, everyone else can stretch the floor as well. Maybe just leave the paint for Boston, and if she can take some corner threes and open shots. I just don't know how many open looks are going to be from 3 are going to be available to her that she's going to be able to take. So I'll say more than 2. I think probably 2.2. And then I think her 3-point percentage over the last 2 seasons in 2023, she pretty much had a 30% shooting from 3. But last year it was just 20% from 3 with taking 2 per game. But again, there was no one in that team that could set her up to give her open looks and to give her those open shots. So I do think that goes back up to maybe 31%. is what I'm thinking. Just based on the quality of shots that are going to be created for you when you're playing with someone like Caitlin Clark and they're the focus, and you're also playing with Aaliyah Boston who sees the floor really well and can hit the open person. There'll be better shots available. Free throw attempts. So she had 4.6 last year. She was very aggressive. Again, playing 30 minutes per game. I don't know how aggressive she's going to be this year, but typically she's in her career she has taken 2.7, so she averages about 2.7 free throw attempts per game. So last year was huge, only because, in my opinion, because of the workload that she had. So I think that's going to come down. So I can maybe see, I don't know, 3.5. And I think most teams are going to be more comfortable fouling her than anyone else in the Fever team. Like, as you can see, like most people, Sophie Cunningham is 87% free throw shooter. Lexi Ho is 80% last year. Well, she won't see. I don't know. We'll get to her, but Kelsey Mitchell 83%, Duana Bonner 83%, Sydney Colson 88%. So you have a really good free throw shooter. So they'll elect, if they need to foul someone, they'll be more comfortable fouling Howard than anyone else probably on the team. And she's a career 75% free throw shooter. So, I mean, we can do something maybe close to that. 7.42 or something like that. From free throw, I think that's fair. I mean, her average is 75, so I'm just giving a little bit lower than that. Rebounds, she's a career 5.6. She gets about 5.6 rebounds per game for her career. Lots of minutes last year. I think this team has a lot more rebounders than probably the Dallas Wings. Although Dallas Wings had Tiara McCowan, who's huge and gets tons of rebounds. But I just think with the diminished amount of minutes, you have Boston, you have Caitlin Clark, who also takes a lot of rebounds. And what is it? Bonner took 6 rebounds as well. So a lot of people in the team are really good rebounders. So maybe about 5.1 rebounds per game. Assists for her career. She 1.5 assists per game. She's not going to be needed to distribute the basketball that much. So I'm comfortable with 2 assists per game. Steals, I think that's going to continue. She's always been a good steal, at least 1 per game. So let's do 1.1 steals per game. Blocks, for her career, 1 block per game. And if she can focus on defense for the most part, right? Like not having to generate or not having to spend that much energy on offense that she's been had to do in the past. Now she doesn't have to worry about generating offense that much and spending energy on that side of the court. Maybe she can spend a little bit more time on the defense and block a few more shots. So maybe 1 block shot per game. Turnovers, she's not going to be handling that ball that much. And for her career, she's at 2.1. 2.8 was a lot. But I think she's probably going to turn it over 2.1 because she's not going to be handling the basketball that much. At least that's not my expectation. She's not going to be handling the ball that much. So maybe 2.1, or maybe less, maybe 1.9 turnovers. Points. So here's going to be the interesting thing, and here's the math, right? So if I'm expecting that she's going to take 10 shots per game and hitting at a 52% or 52.5% clip, that's already and also 3. So we have to consider maybe 4 shots. That's 8.13 or 8.13, 11 points, and 2 free throws, 13 points. So maybe 13.4 points per game, maybe. Now this would be the lowest points per game numbers that she's had in about 5 years, right? Since she was in Seattle. But again, if your fifth best player in the lineup and their starting lineup is averaging 13.4 points per game, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. So that's my my projection, 13.4 points per game. So look at this usage percentage. So percentage. So what it means and why I wanted to include this stat here as we're doing our analysis. Usage percentage is an estimate of the percentage of team plays used by a player while they were on the floor. So I mean, her usage percentage in Dallas last year was even higher than Enrique. So she had the most in the Dallas Wings team last year. That to me is a little bit crazy, right? Because Enrique is used. I mean, she was shooting everything, right, and playing all kinds of minutes. But Howard was the most used as far as like the team's plays. But and she's never really averaged or had a lower than 20% usage percentage in her career. But I'm afraid that's about to change this year with the Fever, and not by a lot. It's just again, there are other players. If you're starting with those five, and maybe I don't know. And here's the consideration now, right? Like as you're looking at these numbers, and as we do this exercise, you have players. So if we look at Kelsey Mitchell, 25% usage rate last year. DeWanna Bonner, 23% usage rate last season. Aaliyah Boston, 20% usage percent last season. Caitlin Clark, 27% usage rate last season. And I think Howard, it was higher than that, wasn't it? Yeah, higher than that. She had a higher usage percentage. But here's the problem, like how do you use all these high usage percentage players at one time in the starting lineup? So here is where potentially Stephanie White can get creative and I don't know if and again like when they reaching out to free agency, was Amber Cox promising a starting lineup spot to Howard and to Bonner? Because in that case, now you're committed to that. But then again, is that the best needs of the team? I just don't know. And I've never seen this. Like now that I look at this is extremely interesting because you have 28% for Howard, 25% for Mitchell, 23% for Bonner, 20% for Boston, 28% for Clark. That's a lot of usage or players that are used to, being used a lot when they're on the court. So, but if you have one of these high usage rate players coming off the bench, then they'll be more effective with the second unit. I don't know. But let's assume that she remains in the starting lineup because if she's in the bench, if she comes off the bench, then she can maintain a 23-24% usage rate or percentage. But if she's in the starting lineup and she's mostly playing with starters, then it's going to be probably 18.2 usage percentage, if not less. Because I would imagine she will have the less usage percentage out of those five. So I don't know. But for offensive rating, defensive rating, I would think maybe something like 108 and 92 or maybe 94 just because of so I think the offense is going to remain great when Natasha Howard's on the floor. The defense, I think the team overall is just going to be better defensively when she's on the floor. So that's why we have, I think for whole it's the opposite. I think the offensive rating is going to be a little bit better. Defensive rating, not that it's going to be worse. 104 is still really good. But maybe not as great defensively as with Howard on the floor. So 108.94 is my estimation for offensive rating, defensive rating. And then for awards, it depends. Again, is she going to be an all-star? Ooh, man. So she wasn't an all-star the last 2 years, but she's capable of being an all-star. She's been an all-star twice in her career, once in 2019, once in 2022. She could be, especially if the team is like dominating. She could be. I'll put an asterisk next to that. And if she comes off the bench, she's probably going to be sixth player of the year, but that's an asterisk as well. And one thing, and not this is not a Lexi Hole one, but one thing that I really did mess up when I did Lexi Holes, and I'm gonna fix this actually, is most improved player. Just doing a quick back to Howard. I just needed, I just needed to do that one for Lexi because I have forgotten when I was doing it. I forgot that she potentially could win most improved player of the year. But anyways, she could potentially be an all-star depending on how the team record looks. And if she has these numbers, I think these are potentially all-star level numbers. And sixth player of the year. I just don't know how many all-stars there can be from one team. I don't know if there's a limit or anything like that. But she could be an all-star, but I'll give it an asterisk because that's a possibility. And if she comes off the bench, I'm not suggesting that either. It's just that now looking at those usage percentage, like how do you use of those people who are used to having the ball in their hands and making things happen? So potentially all-star, potentially sixth player of the year. Yeah, I mean, interesting. It's an interesting exercise, especially with the newcomers, with the newcomer players, because they they were part of an entirely different system. And someone for me, like if I had been watching the WNBA for a long time, or not as much as the NBA, of course, but like I don't know, for 5 years or something like that, then I would have a better understanding of the different players that Natasha Howard was playing with, or the rest of the team was playing with, to make a better assessment as to how she's better used or in which environments does she thrive under. But the thing is, she's not in this Fever team. She's just not needed to be a super player. She just needs to really fill a role, and that's it. And I hope that she's able to adjust to do that. And it's not like she hasn't done that before, right? She just have to go back to her Seattle days, and she'll be fine. So she's done it in the past. It's just that over the last 5 years, she's had teams have asked a lot more of her. Not that she's not capable of doing that. She can, and she showed it. But maybe but those teams that she were with, that were not that effective. But maybe going back to a similar role that she had with Seattle when she won those titles is when she can be most effective and the team can be most effective, right? Like I said, the last time that she was the fifth best player on a team was a really long time ago. So I don't think it's going to be a hard adjustment. I think the game is just going to come easier to her, and she'll be able to just really be a pivotal player that other teams forget about. You know what I mean? Like she becomes an afterthought, and then she's able to get easy buckets because it's just too many people to guard. But I'm curious. I mean, um, I, I'm curious as to how all of these things develop. And again, I have all my trust in Stephanie White in that she's gonna figure all of this out. There's a potential now that I looked at this that she could come off the bench. I mean, if you had to choose out of those five players of Caitlin Clark, Kelsey Mitchell, Aaliyah Boston, DeWanna Bonner, or Natasha Howard, out of those five players, which one would be more likely to come off the bench if one needed to? I think it's Howard. And then you probably start either Cunningham or Lexi Hall at the three position, at the small forward position, and then you would put Bonner at the four. Something like that could potentially work. Um, but I don't know. I don't know. Everything right now, it's exciting, and I'm jealous of that coaching staff that gets to play around with this and see what works and doesn't work. And I'm jealous to an extent, and not at the also on the other end, because it's not going to be easy to try to figure this out, to try to keep everyone happy. But again, the most important thing when it comes to that type of thing is communication. being straightforward, honesty, transparency. All of those things are going to be huge from the coaching standpoint in making sure that everyone, understands their role. But I see great things. I mean, she's going to help. She's going to be a big reason, if the Fever win the title, Natasha Howard is going to be a big, big reason as to why the Fever win the title. She's just one of those players that are highly impactful players, that do all the great little things. They does it well, and translates to wins and to win in basketball and championships. So this is my breakdown of Natasha Howard. Let me know. Of course, I had to get creative. It's hard to give, for everyone to have huge numbers. I remember when LeBron went to Miami with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. Chris Bosh was killing it in Toronto. Like, he was putting up crazy numbers in Toronto as the number one option. And then when he went to Miami, like, he was just a role player, because you can't really have three people, um, you touching the basketball that much or taking that many shots. And in this case, it's five, right? And that's why I think I made the recommendation maybe off the bench. But this is my projection, as close as I can do it with the amount of data that we have. It's a cool and fun exercise, but I don't know. I'm curious to your numbers. What do you think? How do you think Howard's going to be utilized? What are the numbers that maybe you foresee for her? Yeah, I'm curious to know your thoughts on all of this. So, but give me some feedback as well. Give me some feedback if you like this format or if you like this type of content. Again, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. But that is all for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.